We are at the regular workshop meeting in City Hall, 8 North Elmhurst Road, at the time of 6, I don't know, with the
34.
time change, I don't know anything. 6:34?
6:34, sir.
Very good. Like 4 minutes tardy, to be specific. So we're meeting here for various discussions on the agenda items.
Yes,
And we need a roll call for a quorum.
okay. Alderman Dolick.
Here.
Alderman Rosenthal.
Here.
Alderman Ludwigson.
Here.
Alderman Williamson.
Here.
Alderman Messer. Here.
All right, we have 5 aldermen, all 5 are present. We do have a quorum, and we could go forward rather, for the Pledge of Allegiance by Alderman Dolick.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're looking for approval of minutes. Is that you, Madam Clerk?
Okay, these are the minutes from the, let's see, from the February 26, 2018 regular meeting minutes.
Make a motion, we approve.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderman Dolick.
Aye.
Alderman Rosenthal.
Aye.
Alderman Messer. Aye. Alderman Ludwigson.
Aye.
Alderman Williamson.
Motion passes 5-0. Joe, where are you located tonight?
Oh, Mr. Mayor, our next item is 5 presentation, and we have a request for presentation by Tim Kupchik of the Hillcrest Lake Homeowners Association regarding Hillcrest Lake treatment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I come before you tonight on behalf of the Hillcrest Lake Homeowners Association. I know we have a lot to discuss this evening, so I'll keep my comments brief. First, on behalf of our association, many of whom are in the room tonight, I wish to thank the mayor, the city council members, and the city administrator for taking positive steps toward saving Hillcrest Lake. For anyone watching this meeting via our cable channel, let me provide a brief background. Hillcrest Lake is a city-owned 13-acre lake located on the north side of Willow Road between Wheeling Road to the east and Elmhurst Road to the west. For the past 30 years, this lake has attracted all sorts of amazing wildlife. It served a large portion of Prospect Heights as a basin for stormwater flow during rain events, and it serves as a source of water for the Prospect Heights Fire Department to use during the event of a fire. In the early 1950s, there was a building boom going on in Prospect Heights. Area residents became concerned about how overbuilding might not only destroy this natural wonder, but also cause flooding in the surrounding areas if homes were not allowed to be built on the site. So in 1957, the Hillcrest Lake Homeowners Association was formed, and we purchased Hillcrest Lake to prevent it from being filled in and used for more home construction. From 1964 through 1976, various groups tried to acquire Hillcrest Lake. The Homeowners Association refused to sell. Instead, on September 18, 1987, the Hillcrest Lake Homeowners Association donated the lake to the city of Prospect Heights. We did so with one simple request: take care of it as we have done for the past 30 years. For the next 27 years, the lake pretty much took care of itself. And starting in the summer of 2014, everything changed. Lake levels dropped to all-time lows. Weeds that were once submerged grew out of control as they poked their heads out into the full sunlight. The fish population dropped at an alarming rate, and the mosquito population exploded. Residents, some of whom have lived here for 20, 30, and even 40 years, found themselves living next to this 13-acre weed and mosquito-infested swampland. So what happened? How did the lake get so shallow? A detailed discussion of what caused these low levels is way beyond the time that I have here tonight. However, this information can be found on our website at hillcrestlake.org. In August of 2015, the Homeowners Association gave a presentation to the City Council asking for permission to install a $400 device called a flashboard riser. The simple device allows you to control the minimum lake levels, been used by lake and pond managers for many years. However, after commissioning a study into the matter, the city discovered that this type of device would not be permitted because the lake is part of a watershed area and only a permanent weir structure might be allowed instead. Unfortunately, this weir structure could take years to get approved for permits and could end up costing the city over $1 million to install. At the same time, we've been trying to get the water levels raised back up. We've been investigating ways to deal with the overwhelming weed issue. Even if we are eventually able to get the water levels back up, the weeds will still have to be addressed because they've gotten so far out of control. Our association commissioned a comprehensive 6-week study of all the potential solutions, including dredging, aeration, biological muck reduction, mechanical harvesting, and chemical treatments. The results of this study are also available on our website. At the conclusion of the study, it became obvious that the safest and most cost-effective solution to control the excessive weed growth would be an EPA-approved chemical treatment. In February 2016, the city hired an aquatic management company to chemically manage all the weeds in the lake. This firm recommended the use of a contact herbicide on only half of the lake per year so as not to risk causing harm to the fish and reducing the possibility of subsequent algae development. They also recommended the use of a contact instead of a systemic herbicide. It does not totally kill the weeds, rather it leaves the roots intact so they regrow each year. Killing the entire plant, which you would have had done if you used a systemic herbicide, could result in a much more invasive species of weeds taking over the lake the following season. He also believed the best approach is to manage the weed problem with annual treatments alternating between treatment areas from year to year. So in May of 2016, they came out and treated the eastern half of the lake. The results were dramatic. For the entire summer of 2016, the treated side of the lake was completely clear of weeds. However, the untreated side was still covered with weeds. In 2017, they treated the western half of the lake. Again, the treated side was weed-free. The untreated side, the eastern half, although starting to show weeds again, was much better than it had been before the program began. The treatments are working very well. And despite some initial concerns expressed by some part of the treatments, there have been absolutely zero side effects. No dead fish, no algae taking over the lake, no problems or other more invasive weeds taking over, absolutely zero problems. In fact, Hillcrest Lake is beginning to look like it did for the past 30 years before it developed the weed issues. The fish are flourishing and the fishermen have returned. The boaters were able to use their canoes and kayaks on the lake again. The mosquito problem has abated. The wildlife have returned. Even our old friend, the bald eagle, which I first spotted on our lake back in 2013, has returned to our lake again because it was able to catch fish again. Here's a photo I took in November of 2016. As you know, we only treat half the lake each year. In the first year, 2016, the city treated the eastern half, and last year we treated the western half. And while last year the eastern half did grow back and grew back at a much slower rate and kept mostly below the surface of the water. That's why it's important that now that we have the lake on the road to recovery, that the city continues with a chemical weed management program. Otherwise, in a year or two, we will be back to where we started. Thank you again for your decisive actions in helping protect and preserve this valuable city resource. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer at this time. Otherwise, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you tonight.
Questions, anyone?
I have none. Thank you. Nice
Thank you.
presentation, Tim.
Alderman, anyone? I think we ought to congratulate you, your group, and all the people that come out in bad weather and rain and sunshine. I've seen them, I've talked to them. It's amazing what's been accomplished. There's no small effort, large effort that turns something small. It really is neat to hear that story. And I congratulate you and Agnes and whoever else is here from the group tonight, because you've done it. You've done it for us. You've done it for the people that live around the lake, and just in general. I've seen people. I go to St. Al's quite a bit. I've seen people fishing. That's something that is really good. Really happened. And thank you.
If I could add one.
Yes, sir.
So you know, it is on tonight's agenda to be approved. And in my conversations with
others, and it looks like it will be approved by consensus, so.
Here you go. You got one more. All right, so we got a leader of the pack, and I think it's gonna happen. I'm sure it's gonna happen. All right, Mr. Administrator.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ware. Do we have any citizen concerns and comments? And the clerk?
We do not.
Okay, which brings us to staff, elected officials, and commission reports, sir.
All right, do we want to start with the normal process of having anyone and everyone say something, starting with you, Joe?
No report tonight, sir. Thank you.
Mr. DeShawn?
No report.
No reports,
You should really say who you are too, so that we don't,
Michael Ducharme, Director of Finance.
thank you.
And no report.
No report.
Peter Falcone, Assistant to City Administrator, no report.
All right, but you are looking for articles to come in from not only our group here, but from the outside? for our-
Absolutely, and I know there are a couple of members of our boards and commissions in the audience, and one of them's already gotten it in, so I don't have to worry about them, but if you are a member of a board or commission for the city of Prospect Heights, we are looking for your submission for our newsletter, which will be coming out shortly. Get those into me quickly, please.
Yes, and please, we want to publicize what you accomplish, what you do on behalf of our city, and the bill you send is zero. So that's really all good things that are happening. So thank you for those of you that do and are here to listen. Madam Clerk?
Yes, Wendy Morning Adams, City Clerk. The only thing I have just to remind everybody, this is the Bridge Church grand opening. Now, I thought it was on the 15th, and now it's on the 14th, correct?
13th.
Is it 13th?
Yes.
It got changed again?
That's tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Okay, it got changed again. Well, I'm glad I brought it up. What time, so everybody
5
knows?
o'clock.
It is 5 o'clock, okay. I hope everybody can attend. It's gonna be a great grand opening.
Brand new project, beautiful building on Euclid, just a little bit east of Route 83 here, Elmer's Road. So go if you can. Food's free. I'll take you there. Alderman Messer?
Laura Messer, Ward Alderman, no report.
No report, but just I wanted to ask, can people vote here absentee? Are they able, or early?
Vote
whatever
on
that is.
specific
No, I
items?
mean the election is coming up.
You mean at our,
Next week.
Oh, well, we have a
City Hall?
voting place here.
no,
No, they can't vote.
Where can they go early?
The county, but I'm not sure, you might want to check that.
We can go to the,
And somebody asked me what the early polling places are.
Wheeling is open.
They can still go to the, if they want to call here, we'll
township
we'll
building.
help them.
Okay.
That's fine.
Arlington Heights Road, Alderman, they take, I used to go there
At the
early.
Wheeling Township, yeah.
Wheeling Township office.
I believe the county buildings too.
Yeah, the county building.
Thank you.
All right, Alderman Rosenthal.
No comment, really, just to thank the community. It's always nice for those of us who sit up here to find out when we've done something right, and as far as the lake is concerned. I personally, and I've talked with the city administrator about it, I'd like to see that area, both the slough and the lake, become more involved and a little bit, and more, welcoming may not be the right word, but having an incentive for the rest of the community to be able to take advantage of it, both the lake and the slough, because they're both coming along very well, at least from my observations of it.
Thank you. Alderman Doldick,
I have no report, thank you.
Mark Roscoe, Superintendent of Public Works.
he himself.
Nice presentation. Been in town a long time. I remember as a kid trying to make a piece of plywood a boat about midnight out on the, and it's a few years back, but looks nice over there. For residents, it was one of those events.
I'm just picturing
Sorry.
the plywood still sitting
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
and you're now being
It was
in charge of having to get
unsuccessful,
rid of it.
but yeah, probably. As we get into the nicer weather, we're getting away from the ice and the snow. Our crews are out working, doing storm rotting and sewer rotting. We're really trying to get ahead of things coming up for the rains in the springtime. So for residents that are out there, your culverts and your swales in the front yard, if you got leaves that have piled up from the fall that are still in there, pick them up, get them out in the trash. clear those obstructions, as we come through different areas. It'll just help all of us down the road. So you'll see our big trucks out there and the guys out working every day. We're trying to do 2 or 3 days a week of just doing culvert rotting and our storm pipes to get ahead of what's coming. So you see the guys out there, you can wave to them, they're working. That's it, sir.
All right, thank you. Alderman Williamson?
Scott Williamson, Alderman, 3rd Ward. To ask Mark a question, you get rid of leaves and stuff. When does Republic start picking up?
I believe they
have
start,
They
just
have already
started.
done
Yes.
landscape waste?
So put them out at the curb.
Okay, and
Or it's this, I'm sorry, it's the 16th. It's the 16th.
so this Friday?
This Friday.
This Friday.
Okay, landscape waste beginning to be picked up this Friday. And to your point, Alderman Rosenthal, I'd be happy to discuss some ideas with you and, you know, kind of formulate a plan to create something
Good.
around the slough of the lake.
Good.
Outside of that, I do not have any reports.
Thank you. Aaron Schulteis?
Deputy Clerk Karen Schulteis, and nothing to really report, just to remind people, April 21st is the Mayor's Breakfast, the annual Mayor's Breakfast.
Dan Peterson, Director of Building Development. Quick update on the truck subcommittee. We had our second meeting last week and got through all the ordinance proposed changes. There were some good suggestions. In an effort to communicate those revisions to the community, starting this Friday, there will be an update in the e-news on the city website. And those people who have submitted email addresses, we'll send them out specifically for that. The plan is to allow the next month for people to read what those proposed changes are, because we won't have time to get it to the public before the next PZBA meeting, and then take action on those proposed changes at the April PZBA meeting. So for the next, we'll have copies of that here at City Hall, and copies will be made available at next week's PZBA meeting, so people can get the information in their hands related to the proposed changes.
Can I ask a question, Dan?
Yes, sir.
Can we get a memo that kind of outlines what was discussed at that last meeting?
Yes, I did give highlights in my weekly report, but I'll get a more formal memo out this week.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Chief?
Al Steffen, Chief of Police. I'd like to announce that we will be having another Citizen Police Academy starting in April. The actual dates and the application is online, or if somebody wants to shoot me an email, if anybody's interested. We welcome everyone. So,
What is the police academy?
what is the Police Academy?
You know, what's it all about?
Basically, what we do is we bring folks in and we show them what their police department does day in, day out, 365 days a year. We put them in actual scenario-based training to give them kind of an idea of what it's like to be a police officer. And the other thing we do is that graduates that successfully complete the program, a lot of them stay on as volunteers with us, and they help us out with a lot of community outreach programs that we do throughout the rest of the year.
Good, I think we have a living candidate right here. Is that right, Alderman Dolick?
I would agree, it's an
Gone
excellent
through the
program.
process?
I went through it about 5 years ago and have been participating in the outreach program, which I think is a tremendous program that gives our young people in the city just some positive options to turn to, and it's a great program, so I encourage anyone to look into it. It's a great thing the police department puts on.
I went through it with Matt.
You did?
I did. We were the first ones.
I didn't give you the diploma, though. I get to give everybody the diploma. I didn't know that.
But
Congratulations.
yeah, it's very interesting.
Congratulations, that's great. The outreach program, just say a couple words about that, because that is an impressive program.
The outreach program started as a grant back in the 90s, where we did basically it was a summer camp for disadvantaged youth, and when the grant ran out, we just started doing it on our own, and officers volunteered their own time and talent to do this, and we basically operated on money that the Prospect Heights Police Association raises during the course of the year. And what we've seen happen as a result of this is that our involvement in gang activity has dropped significantly as a lot of these kids get to know officers on a first-name basis, and moreover, not just the kids, with the parents and the whole community as a whole. So it's been very successful. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's a good program. How many do you expect that will enlist?
Usually we have anywhere between 30 to 45, 50 kids during the course of the summer.
Okay, and what about the police academy?
The police academy can run anywhere from, I think the lowest number that we've ever had is probably 12, and the most maybe 25.
Good program, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Just a quick comment from me, you know, making better use out of the slough and lake area. We have two small parks, you know, along Elmhurst Road that face the slough in particular, I think. I don't see much usage there by anyone. It seems like we could make a fishing, work with it, of course, work with the owners of the property. That's our Parks Department, and get maybe some fishing done over there on a little place. Because it's hard to sit alongside the road. I think some of you know that. With a little kid sitting next to you. Now, Willow Road is a slow traffic area, so it isn't very scary. But I've thought of that, you know, somebody veers off and there's a young man fishing, it's not great. But make it more friendly for more users, and I think that should be the goal as we go forward.
That was my thought, Mayor, make it more encouraging for people to be there.
Yeah. And look for the eagle, you know. We have a contest, first person to see an eagle and take a picture, not you, Tim. You've done that already. Maybe we'll have a special prize or something. So, yeah, that should be a better, more agreeable area for the entire city. So, all right, Mr. Administrator, what's next?
That brings us to the consent agenda. These are matters that we've dealt with before. They're routine in nature. Item A is second reading of an ordinance amending various primarily building department fees. Item B is staff memo and ordinance amending defining fee schedule, which complements the changes in A. Item C is a ordinance increasing metro parking fees presently $1.75 per day to $2 per day. And finally, item D is, as discussed previously, is the recommended contract with Clark Aquatic Services for Hillcrest Lake herbicide treatment and algae management for the 2018 season.
All right, and we're voting on all of these readings?
Correct, yes, sir.
All right, well, let's start with 1808, increasing the Class C3 liquor license. Yes.
I make an omnibus motion that we approve items A through D,
9A through D.
9A through 9D, as submitted.
Second that motion.
Yeah, that's what a consent agenda is supposed to be.
Mayor, may I just make a point?
Yes.
The 9A in our packet is not the correct version. Dan gave us the corrected version, just so everyone knows this is what we're voting on.
So are we good with a consent agenda on the second reading, Mr. Council?
Yes.
Okay. All right, good. Well, let's, we need to vote on, we certainly need to vote on the second reading. Don't we? Someone help me.
We got a first, we got a second, this is all on the consent agenda, you can vote.
Even though it's the second reading. And it takes a vote for the whole consent agenda.
A, B, C, and D.
Motion to approve, please.
So move.
Items A, B, C, and D. We have a motion, do we need, let's have a second, please.
Second.
All right, roll call.
Alderman Williamson.
Aye.
Alderman Dolek.
Aye.
Alderman Rosenthal.
Aye.
Alderman Ludwigson.
Aye.
Alderman Lester. Aye.
Good, routinely held, Tim, no problem.
Can I ask, when will we be reaching out to Clark Aquatics to issue the contract?
The contract will be issued this week. Part of what people are interested is the treatment. That's temperature sensitive.
Oh, sure.
So that, I don't know when, but they have, certainly they have us on their list, and
Temperature sensitive and budget year sensitive, so we wanna make sure we get that bill before May first, right?
Right.
Because this is this year's budget,
Right, correct,
so it's gotta be a May first,
right,
date, at least on the invoice.
right. Yeah, yes, it will be within the correct budget.
All right, so that, those issues passed. Moving on to old business. Mr. Administrator, what do we have?
This is ordinance increasing Class C3 liquor license by request from Rubens Bar and Grill, 5 South Wolf Road. The last two previous meetings, there were presentations about this. Mr. Rubin is here tonight, and now it's up for second consideration, second reading.
All right, questions, Alderman Ludwigson?
I wanna make the motion to approve.
All right, we have a second.
Don't pass out from that now. I didn't say anything. Aren't you surprised? Yeah, I know, you're not gonna let me change my mind.
Yeah, I couldn't tell if that was really your voice.
I think Ruben's I think he's trying to do the right thing and will, do what he should.
No?
Thank you.
Ruben, would you please let the real Pat Ludwigson know?
Well, Pat's been there several times. I'm not sure.
I had one customer
Stand up, please.
that came over to me to my restaurant.
Very good food,
Good.
good service.
All right, so we need a roll call, I guess, right?
Okay. We had,
Second.
Unless someone else has something to say.
Second.
Oh,
you did it.
We
now
have
we
a-
need a roll call.
All right, let's do it.
Alderman Nestor,
Aye.
Alderman Ludwigson.
Aye.
Alderman Rosenthal.
Aye.
Alderman Dolek.
Aye.
Alderman Williamson.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Ruben, congratulations.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
I always tell new people coming into town, don't let your buddies come over and look for something free. Charge them double. If they're there to help you, then charge them double,
So
just
you
the
trying to
first
tell
time.
me to charge them double?
Yeah.
My
And if they
sister-
complain, we're not gonna listen, so.
My sister will, but I
All right, moving on.
Yes, sir. We're at item 10B, and we're requesting first reading of this ordinance. This is an ordinance approving a land lease renewal from Commonwealth Edison for the Metro commuter parking lot. Mr. Mayor, as you're aware, is considerable time and effort with negotiations with Commonwealth Edison. Considerable discussions between their attorneys and our attorneys at Tressler. And it's recommended that in order to continue use of the Metro lot, that the council approve the lease agreement.
All right, well, my comment is simple. We've beaten this to death.
Yes, sir.
And for a long time. What I'd like to do is if we can waive the first reading, anyone have an objection to that?
I'm afraid if we don't, they'll add more stuff into it.
That's probably true.
That's what they try every day, so I'd like to just move this down the road. First reading waiver, please.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. First reading, and do a roll call.
Alderman Rosenthal.
Absolutely aye.
Alderman Williamson.
Aye.
Alderman Dolek.
Aye.
Alderman Nestor.
Aye.
Alderman Ludwigson.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Let's move on to the actual motion being approved. So it would technically be the second reading, and we need a motion to approve, and then we can discuss further.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any comments regarding moving on with Commonwealth Edison? Alderman Messer?
I have two minor comments.
Okay.
Joe, I told you I was gonna ask this, so you can be ready. I just wanted to confirm that the amounts for the rents shown on Exhibit B either match what we've already paid, since some of them are past years, or if,
The record we were able to determine from finances, the last payment was made October 2017, and it was for $21,000. And that also hit
what
that,
lease year was that supposed to be for then? For from November 2017 to 2018?
I'm looking at, come from the real estate department. from Jim Dudek. I believe it was from the previous lease.
Because since we have November 2015 to October 2016, and then 2016, 2017, if those are past years, I guess I'd just like to know if we paid those, and if the amounts reflected here are indeed the same amounts we paid. And if we paid something in October 2017, was that back payment for that year that had passed, or was that for the coming up November 2017 to October 2018, in which case Exhibit B should be updated to show we paid $21,000 and not $18,000?
We were billed for those 2 years. We tried to pay the bills, and they wouldn't accept them. I got that part right?
That part is correct, that's
Okay.
true. That was subsequent to this payment, so.
Right. So they're unpaid still today, because we were not gonna pay the bills until the council approved the process.
Correct.
All right. Now the question comes down to, we're talking about 21,000 versus 18, right? 19,000.
Well, depending on when it was paid. Well, I mean, and if we paid 2017, 2018, I would think we paid the 2 prior years. I mean, if they wouldn't send us an invoice, if they sent us an invoice for this year, I would think they would have sent us an invoice for the 2 prior years.
This contract didn't end in 17, did it end in 16?
16, correct.
Good, so we
Yeah.
couldn't have paid them in 17. October, they
But
refused
we
payment
did.
because they
Yeah,
didn't
we-
bill us.
Yeah. We do have a,
Didn't they refuse to accept it because they
Well,
didn't bill us?
they did refuse after that. And, you know, I'll have to follow up with both our council as well as Edison.
We get it
There's,
straightened out, but you haven't paid this year yet, right?
no, we have not.
So I think.
And this year being November 1st, 2017 to October 31st, 2018.
Correct.
All right, so that year we don't think we paid, but we think we may have paid the prior 2 years.
Yes.
Okay, so then I think we should just confirm that we paid what's actually shown here, if not, that we make sure it matches.
Mike, can you work on that for us, please?
Sure.
What's your pleasure then, to hold it or to approve it with changes to be made as?
Well, I think the ordinance allows legal counsel to make minor changes like this, so I think we can, the way the ordinance reads, if we approve it, that they can take care of this before actually signing the lease.
Anyone else with questions on the matter?
I had just one more comment.
Yes, ma'am, you have two.
Kevin and I had spoken about this several times. It didn't get updated in the new lease. They're not gonna go back and try to renegotiate at this point, but the purpose of the lease does not allow any other purposes than what's stated in here for permitted use, which does not permit our shredding event for us to be parking there for the 4th of July event. Kevin said he was going to suggest that staff give notice when we're going to do such an event that's not permitted under the lease, and just kind of say, hey, we've done this before, there haven't been any problems, just want to let you know we plan on doing it again, just to make sure we don't get into a situation where we're in breach of the terms.
All right, particularly talking about the 4th of July parade where we all dance.
Like when we
over
park
there.
there, and then the shredding event
Yeah.
is held there, and technically, per the terms of the lease, those are not permitted uses.
All right, are you,
Sounds good.
on
And
board?
Kevin and I spoke
Yes.
on that, so.
Okay. Thank you. So we had a motion, we had a second, we had a discussion. Let's take a roll call.
Yes, sir,
please.
I still have a question.
Oh, some more.
Go ahead first, guy.
I'll ask this of John. John, did we add in the verbiage for liability of attorney fees on their end, should they be in default?
There was
So it's
discussion
not just
back and
one-sided?
forth. I think you might have had some
Right,
discussion today.
yeah, that was one of the
actually.
items that I brought up with them, and again, that's something that they're working on, and per the ordinance with the minor changes, if they can get that in there, they'll get that in there. Kevin agrees that it should be in there.
Oh, I think 100% it should. I mean, it can't just be a one-sided contract.
There are a couple things that are one-sided.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so he is working on that, that was one of my comments. I don't know if I have his email. But he did say that the ordinance allows them to go ahead and make that change, even if we approve it, since it's not changing the actual lease amounts going forward or anything.
And as you can tell from the length of time and the number of people who've
try to move this ball forward. I mean, you've spent a lot of time trying to help out with this, as you, Aaron, and Joe. They're not exactly, how shall I put this play?
You don't even have to, you've said it in so little words.
It's like talking
Receptive.
cheese.
It's not exactly easy to negotiate with. How about that?
Communicated with your silence.
I don't know, Mike could have done it.
All right, so we got that done. Alderman Williamson, anything else?
No, that was my only question.
Alderman Rosenthal?
Just a question and clarification. When you go and ask for permission of these things, is this gonna have to be every year we ask for it? Or can it be done in a way that they just give us approval for the term of the?
You mean the exceptions?
For the 4th of July and that kind of stuff.
We can drop them a note, and include in the note, we presume everything continues on as.
Right, because those are two easy things to forget from year to year.
Right.
Right, but I mean, we're not leasing it or subleasing it when we do those two things. I can't imagine that, you know, I don't know, it says the taxi cabs could go up there, but it's just something that's gonna happen in the
Yes.
everyday occurrence of this contract for the next 5 years. It's only a couple of events. I
And
don't
we
think-
carry our liability insurance too, so.
Yeah, so I don't think it'd be a problem if we don't, you know.
I mean, we can do whatever, that's
They
just
might
when I
be
spoke
leery
to
to do
Kevin.
it because they're gonna think there's some like hidden meaning to that, I would guess, based on how everything's went. So,
I mean, he said technically we would be in breach, and so he suggested giving notice or doing something just to
yeah, we could tell them.
play nice.
However, the way it is, according to what Laura says, if they wanna be, and I will be
If they wanna
silent
be-
with my communication, they want to be they can. So I would just
Well, if
rather
they
have
wanna
it
make
on the
that
record.
battle about having a recycling day and
Well-
a 4th of July parking for the parade, I don't think that's one that they're gonna win in the public arena, so I think we're okay.
Kevin didn't anticipate it being a problem, but just as a professional courtesy to send notice to
Yeah,
make sure that
just
we
tell
are.
them to do it, right. We'll let them know.
All right, anyone else? Thank you. So we're at a point of approving this thing.
Hopefully.
Roll call.
So let's take a roll call.
Okay, Alderman Master?
Aye.
Alderman Ludwigson?
Aye.
Alderman Rosenthal?
Aye.
Alderman Dolick?
Aye.
Alderman Williamson?
Motion passes 5-0. Joe, you want to take it?
Yes, sir. Brings us to new business. Item 11A is requested waiver of the first reading because of time considerations during vehicle sticker sale season. This is an ordinance increasing vehicle sticker late fees in accordance with the recent increase, and we're requesting waiver.
So moved.
So.
All right, we have a second on
Second.
Masters?
Second?
All right, we have a second, we have a discussion. Anyone want to talk? It's pretty straightforward. Something we discussed at council many times. Roll call, please.
Alderman Williamson?
Aye.
Alderman Rosenthal?
Aye.
Alderman Dolick?
Aye.
Alderman Master?
Aye.
Alderman Ludwigson?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Moving on, item B, Joe.
11B is related to that. This is second reading of this ordinance providing for late penalty fees.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
None opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Item C is a staff memo and resolution approving the Patel South Parkway subdivision.
This, folks, is a little item in our ordinance that requires any lots that were deeded meets and bounds under a larger lot of record have to come in for an individual lot of record if they're proposed to be demoed, tore down, or substantially rebuilt. This is a vacant lot on South Parkway, so per that 1998 requirement, they have to create a single lot of record.
And that's what we're doing here.
Correct, and it was unanimously approved by PZBA.
Make a
Dan,
motion
is that-
to,
Oh,
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second, please.
Second.
Discussion. Yes,
does
sir.
that, I mean, there are easements and any right-of-ways that might be there are still there.
Correct.
currently before this happens, correct?
Correct. It just cleans up the responsibility, who is responsible for certain things on that parcel, and it gives very clean delineations of what is owned.
Do we also require if there are any leftover old extended lot lines that go to center line of road be cleared up if somebody comes?
I'd have to do more research on that, Alderman. I can't answer that right now.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, we have a motion, we have a second, we have a discussion. Roll call, please.
Alderman Messer?
Aye.
Alderman Williamson?
Aye.
Alderman Ludwigson?
Aye.
Alderman Dolick?
Aye.
Alderman Rosenthal?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Item 11D is requested waiver first reading of an ordinance approving a variation for 107 East Leon Lane. This is a variation of a front yard setback to allow the construction of a porch. It was approved and recommended by the Plan Commission on Plan Commission Zoning Board on a unanimous vote, and request for waiver of the first reading so that they may accelerate construction.
Before we
yes, sir,
take
Director
the
Peterson.
motion, before we do the motion vote, there was a typo, it's 7 East Leon, not 107, and it is correctly reflected in the ordinance and the rest of the
You
motion.
read my mind, Dan.
I'm-
You're starting to guess what my questions are before you get there.
Yes.
I'd stay ahead of you, and that's pretty tough.
Thank
All
you.
right, so we have a first reading waiver request.
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
Roll call.
Alderman Williamson?
Aye.
Alderman Messer?
Aye.
Alderman Ludwigson?
Aye.
Alderman Rosenthal?
Aye.
Alderman Dolick?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Now we want the final approval, again changing 107 to 7,
Mhm.
as it is reflected in the ordinance. And this being the second reading, motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have first, we have a second, discussion. There being none, so roll call, please.
Alderman Dolick?
Aye.
Alderman Williamson?
Aye.
Alderman Rosenthal?
Aye.
Alderman Messer? Aye. Alderman Ludwigson?
Motion passes 5-0.
This brings us to 12, our workshop meeting, and following discussion last summer at the Strategic Directions Committee level, as well as the council, to try to break the budget into more digestible parts with greater presentation and interaction with department directors.
Can I ask Joe, can we do the approval of warrants real quick so that we can just finish on that?
Oh, sure.
Okay, expenses for this period, 290,937.21. 3/2/2018 payroll posting of $142,059.58. February 2018 Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, $18,375.67. February 27, 2018 Viva Police Retirement Health Savings, $24,894.18. Total warrants, amount of $476,264.
Motion to approve as presented.
Motion to approve?
Second, please.
Second.
Roll call.
Alderman Williamson?
Aye.
Alderman Dolick?
Aye.
Alderman Rosenthal?
Aye.
Alderman Ludwigson?
Aye.
Alderman Messer? Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. I'm not sure if it was sent out yet, Joe, maybe you have, but Prospect Heights is rated the third most frugal city in the state of Illinois. And that was a lot of research done by, I'm sure, some committee of the government. Did you see that?
I saw that, but John Styler sent that to us.
John sent it, forwarded it to us, but I also got a regular one.
Oh, okay.
I think that's pretty impressive. How many cities do we have in this state?
Many.
You know,
At least 7.
I know 183 are in Home Road.
That's pretty frugal.
That's pretty good. We have the lowest is Niles, all these other places are just
I think there's 1,500 townships, so
Township.
each township has a bunch of cities. The other thing, have you ever done anything with those numbers? I like those numbers that they showed, that 700, and I think it was $750 a resident cost that we have as a
Yeah.
city. I've done that before. I went to Arlington Heights' budget, pulled their fire, tried to figure out what it was. We are always below every town around us on that metric when you're measuring per resident cost of whether it be the police department or the entire city.
Primarily due not to have an corporate tax. Primarily due probably to not having a corporate tax levy.
Right, right, that's the main reason. But also too, because we don't have a fire department, so, I mean, we do have one, but not as part of the city, it's not municipal, so sometimes that number is skewed.
Right.
Did you used to do anything like that before?
Have
Now that
done.
we're getting into the budget.
It just depends on, sometimes the numbers get a little skewed based on how many things people are throwing into them. Because many times they're not using the same categories to come up with the cost. If you knew they were the same, then it means a little more to people looking at the numbers.
Some towns, as you point out, will have fire departments or even separate park districts sometimes. It's a bit of a challenge to get an apples to apples comparison.
Yeah, I would think from a research design point of view, at least through validity with the study, you'd have to, if you're comparing us to these other cities, we'd have to roll in those costs that we don't have to actually be able to compare how we are. But it's a good number to quote.
Yes.
It'll be a nice newsletter, I should do.
Yeah. Say what you want, but we're the third most
Yeah,
frugal
exactly.
city.
That's it was an independent
Niles
study,
was
as I
at
recall.
42,000.
Right, it was an independent study.
Wasn't us.
All right, next.
So to continue our budget discussion from last Monday, and first of all, I'd like to introduce some people that you don't often see in our meetings. They work in the boiler room of the finance department. Sherry Grayson and Lara Batten. A lot of the product that's before you tonight is things that they've spent months on.
As a point of, Mr. Administrator, using the term boiler room in that context denotes a number of things that are maybe not be so.
Boiler room is what keeps the ship running.
I couldn't resist.
It's a good point.
I couldn't resist.
Right, not where the skeletons are. But at any rate, they're responsible for much of the work that's behind the product that we're discussing tonight. Tonight, and following along, to break this down into more digestible parts, we have scheduled presentations by Public Works, Finance, and Administration. And we'll start with our newest member of the Prospect Heights team, Mark Roscoe.
Thank you. Would you guys mind explaining this? This is worth a shot, you know?
And maybe just for a point of introduction, Mark started last June. And I think in a short time, less than a year, it's really given him a chance to analyze the operations of the department. And as I think some of the things you've already noticed, there's the changes that he's made in a very positive manner. And I think this budget presentation will reflect that. I think that he's taken the last several months to kind of diagnose where there are needs and priorities, and that's going to be the subject of tonight's presentation.
Thank you, Joe. Trying to grasp the way the budget's been done in the last few years, coming in now since July and working through the changes that Michael's put together and things, it's kind of interesting because I'm trying to pick up on the way things were done and trying to go forward. And I think it's actually a good time for me because I'm not bogged down with all those different fees and structures. I'm looking at the real data and what we need to do. A year from now, I'll be even more sharp on this because we'll have a whole season of all seasons underneath us. So as we came through this total budget line items last year, $1,192,956. This year, as you can see, it's really flat, not much of a change at all. Even though there's been a lot of dynamic changes in the budget, with headcount, with service fees, with the SSA changes, the levies. So I'm really thrilled that it all came together, and it looks like it's gonna be really a smooth process. From the initiatives I have on this, highlighted items, one of the big things I think for Public Works and for the city coming forward the next year is a software tracking program for time and expense of our employees. We're still almost doing a paper timesheet and adding things up manually. If someone were to ask me how much time and effort do we really spend on sewer work or tree work, I can come up with a number, but it's gonna take me a long time to come up with that. And it might not be decimal point accurate. We're one of the very few communities that haven't migrated into something electronic. So I'm really excited about getting into something where we can actually have data to support what's going on. Not just we think this or we think that, or it costs us this much to do tree work, costs this much to landscape. We'll be better off contracting out lawn maintenance in all of our parks. It's hard to tell from the data that we currently have. So that's something I'm looking forward to for this next year coming forward. Over time, I've looked over the past couple of years at different rates and what's been spent. And I think with what we have going on and a little change in headcount, I think that we're gonna be shooting for a lot less overtime this year. The management of the time, instead of sporadic, just, this sounds like a good time to do something on a Saturday or Sunday. I think that we're gonna see a definite reduction in our overtime expense. Fuel usage, it was forecasted high. We're changing some of the way we do things. Not every guy has to drive a truck every day. If we have a job project going on, 2 guys in a truck to go do something. Things like that will help our fuel cost. We're kind of getting away this year from doing drainage, small drainage issues. There'll still be a few things, but the forecasted budget for that was a little high, I thought. One thing that's an increase in here is tree trimming and removal. We have a forecast in our budget to do tree work. In my view and what I've seen and talking to the guys and talking to residents, we haven't really had a good tree program in a long time. Our program is just let them grow. But not taking down trees in a timely fashion, not trimming the ones that need to be trimmed in a timely fashion. We have the ability to do a lot of tree work. Actually, I'll get to that in my next slide. Fuel pump monitoring. We have fuel in our Public Works vehicle for all of our squad cars in our Public Works vehicle, and the fire department purchases fuel through us. We have a key token and then a PIN number for each person. The system's about 14 years old. It's failed multiple times. It's been band-aided back in place. Luckily, the different prompts you need to do, most everyone knows what they are. Your PIN number, the mileage, and what pump you're gonna use. Half the time the display is hieroglyphics. So you're going by memory. I think this is what I do first, this is what I do second. So that's a big thing for us. And the tanks that are in the ground have fuel monitors in them in case there's a spill or a rupture. EPA requirement, they're tested all the time. Again, that system's about 14 years old. The floats that are in there are no longer manufactured. So we'd have to retrofit it anyways. So changing our fuel dispensing, our point of sale, and our level system at the same time is just a common sense approach. And street signage, another big thing. There's a certain standard that all of our street signs need to be. Our speed limit signs, our only signs, things like that, they need to be reflective. There's a whole standard to it. And we really should have been a little bit farther ahead on this process, like 4 years ago. So it's gonna take us 4 to 6 years to get to where we need to be, but we're gonna just take little pieces at a time. We've divided the city up into about 8 sections. So we're gonna manage our sections one at a time. Instead of doing all the speed limit signs in town, we're gonna take care of neighborhoods. That way we're clear and concise, and when we have a project to do, we know we're done with this spot and we move on. And there'll be an inventory of that.
Can I mention something about that? I was actually out in Country Gardens yesterday, and there's a lot of signs you can't even read.
Correct. That's zone 2, sections A, B, C, and D. It is. Middle, north, south, east, west, 4 quarters. So, absolutely. And the lindens, and they're just, some of the signs are just in poor shape. That gets us to our next slide, headcount staffing level. Current workforce we have. In the past, workforce in Public Works was a department director and 6 to 8 full-time staff. Now, I know depending on who you ask, they have different memories of how many people have been here or not. When it was mixed in with engineering plus Public Works. Currently, our workforce consists of 1 superintendent and 5 full-time employees. My proposed workforce, the maintenance worker position that was held by Jim O'Neill was not backfilled when he moved up to superintendent. And now with our acquisition of Old Town Sanitary, our increased focus on stormwater management, additional mechanical maintenance and landscape requirements for our completed Levy 37 project. That's a long thing to say, but there's a lot going on over there. And our overall increased level of service for our internal and our external, our customers, our residents, our commercial property owners, we need to be back up to a better manpower level. My recommendation is to hire 1 full-time employee to restore the staffing levels to what they were 2 years ago. So we have myself and 6 full-time workers. The increases in wages would go towards our sewer fund account, and somewhere in 48 to 56 per year, depending on qualifications and how we go through the union ranking. Our breakdown, fiscal year for this would be 4.5 people out of our general fund, 1 full-time water, 1 out of the sewer, and the other half comes out of our parking fund. And we still are planning on 2 part-time guys to do landscaping, cut grass and trim bushes and clean up.
Now, you had made mention of not backfilling Jim O'Neill's position when he moved up,
Correct.
up to
superintendent. We had Steve Kataya as the director.
Okay.
And then we had 6 full-time Public Works guys. Steve Kataya left the city. Jim O'Neill moved up into his spot, but we never brought another person in behind him.
Are you going to put somebody in that position of foreman now?
That would be me. Oh, you crew
You're
leader?
the superintendent.
We have a crew leader, but he's still one of the crew members.
Okay, didn't Jim hold the position of foreman at one point?
I believe, I
He
can't
did.
say, he was it foreman or crew leader?
After when Steve left,
Is it one and the same,
Yeah.
foreman and crew
I
leader?
believe so. I don't think it was phrased any differently.
yeah, after Steve left, he became the superintendent.
Correct, but is there a difference between foreman and crew leader in the hierarchy of?
In my world, no.
Okay.
We're
We
gonna
don't,
have,
having just been through that labor agreement, we don't have a requirement that there's so many guys, then there has to be a designated foreman. You could just have a crew leader, and we only have, I think, 3 categories of type of worker.
1, 2, and crew leader.
Okay.
And the crew leader is, of course, 2 also.
So it's not a requirement that there be so many
So
crew
we're not
leaders.
adding another position in there like a foreman. Adam Biondo is our crew leader. So he falls into the category of the 6 full-time, presented for 6 full-time people.
Okay.
2 business cards.
What's that?
He has 2 business cards.
No, it's just 1. No. Costs money to make a second card. All right. Other funds we deal with in Public Works. The Water Fund, Michael's done a good job of working through the different processes for billing and elimination of the service charge. We have building repairs we need to do over at the well house. We have additional training for this year. We have no large projects scheduled for this coming fiscal year. Going forward, we have a few things in the pipeline, but nothing that we're going to handle now.
Sorry.
That's all right. Pipeline?
Yeah.
No, okay. That's okay.
That's down the pipeline.
Thank you.
These meetings have to be fun.
They have to.
It's good to have a second guy. Hydrant work, I don't consider this a large project, but it's something we're going to do this year. Is we're going to have a program. We have to be testing our hydrants, flushing the lines, document the flow. This is something we're also working with the fire department on for their ISO rating. So that's a little thing that we're doing this year, but not a large project.
So that's not done every year? That's
No, it's not.
How would it?
The flushing, we try to do every year, but the actual flow testing has to be rated in through a matter of certification. So that's, I think it's every 7 years or we haven't done it in a while. Probably a nice way to say it. Parking fund, we talked about Metro tonight. The service charge elimination out of the budget, going to take care of the funding out of basically headcount for half a guy every year. We're reducing the service levels that we're gonna put in over there for Public Works. We've gone to a lower rotation, having a guy just there like 3 times a week in the morning to check garbages, do a security check, paper towels, toilet paper, things like that. We're trying to reduce the amount of time we spend there because we don't need to be there as much as we have in the past. We're gonna decrease our expenses by doing that. We've talked about changing things, getting rid of paper towels and going to hand dryers even, just to eliminate more of the paper clutter, little cost efficiency, different things of that nature to reduce expenses. And then earlier in the year, Joe and I were talking about a parking lot light plan there. Again, to save money, to reduce our expenditures on power. So now that we know we're gonna go forward with a lease, that'll be something that we'll talk about going forward. That's what we can do to decrease our expenses.
We lease this property from ComEd and we don't get free electricity? Really?
But we do want to take advantage of one of their programs to change to
Can we
LED
work that
lights
in?
where they'll supplement a little bit. So they are inadvertently helping themselves.
Didn't you do something with the lights this year?
Yes, we had a survey. We had, it was
No, I
2
mean,
different.
You actually did something.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
We went in there and when we started, I believe, 30% of the lights were working. Now we're at the 80% mark, just by moving things around. We stopped the use of the north lot, so we didn't need that to be fully lit. There were fixtures in there that had a good ballast but a bad bulb. So instead of spending $6,000 on parts, we took parts from the north and moved it to the general population area. And we increased the lighting and everything. We've got a lot of responses on people who are very pleased that it's more lit now and safer. But having all those lights lit is an expense. The more lights you leave on at home, the higher your bill is. It's the same idea with the Metro line. So if we can do something to get into an LED situation there, a few years payback, and then we'll be a lot better off. So
Or we could write something into the ComEd lease saying, can we please get free power?
that's probably
Is it not?
that's probably a conversation for another workshop meeting in 5 years, because that's where we are, right? 5 years.
It's not a negotiating point?
You can always ask.
So, all right, our sewer fund. We have a 2-year project for televising our system. We've been talking about that. It's finally gonna get rolling this year. Breaking the city into 2 spots is just the best idea, as Joe will talk about in our capital plan. And then in the sewer fund, it also comes up with the additional parts, our aging equipment. We have a lot of work to do. The boys have spent, the men have spent the last 2 days strictly just rotting sewer pipes that have been clogged and filled with grease and oil. They came in early this morning, worked through break. There's a lot to do out there in the sewer world. So, and when you get into it, it's a dirty, nasty business, but it's what we need to do. So that's where our sewer fund comes in. And that's where also the manpower comes in. It's labor intensive. Our tourism district. We still have service charges in that area. Continuing improvement in the corridor. We're out there more often now, cleaning up, just doing garbage cleanup and debris checks. We're really looking forward to this spring. We have tulips and daffodils that are gonna be coming up. And then our summer color. We're improving a couple of the beds and some irrigation. So that area of town, we're really thrilled about what's happening up there.
Are we renewing the landscape concepts? Was that a 2-year contract that we
There's
had?
3, and we're just getting into the 3rd year with it.
Okay.
So we're keeping with the regular parameters of our spring and summer, our different color plans. So next year at this time, we'll be talking about if we're gonna keep them for another maintenance for another 3 years. And at the same time, our irrigation system that's out there, we had installed by a different company, but they are now gonna give me a quote on them taking it over. I believe it'll be a little reduced rate even. So we'll have not only people that put the plants in, but they'll also be responsible to make sure the water works. So we won't have anybody pointing fingers if something's not working. And pooling them together, we get a little package deal on the savings, so I'm looking forward to that. Forestry I touched on just a little bit earlier. it's pretty self-explanatory. We have a lot of tree work to do. Looking for an increase in our budget this year to actually address a lot of the issues that are out there. We had 9 large trees taken down this last fall. It was expensive, but it needed to be done. We have a laundry list of trees that are on our list that need to be addressed. Our current crew, we have a bucket truck that reaches about 23 to 25 feet. When you get into trees that are twice that height, you get into the safety concerns. So there's a lot of stuff that we have to contract out when they get to the large, old growth trees. Most of the stuff, we'll be able to handle ourselves, but there's a lot more time and effort involved. So it's gonna be a little more expensive this year.
Is that tree in the picture alive or dead?
It is, all the branches below it are dead. This is Frankie Court.
Would you consider that a tree that needs to be cut now?
In my mind, yes.
Okay.
But I'm not the arborist, so I'll give you, that's my little disclaimer. Because some people will say the tree is good, some will say it's bad, but it's sad looking.
I was just curious. There's a lot of them like that.
Yes, there are. And that's a city-owned tree. Expenditures, vehicle maintenance, pretty cut and dry. We have our fleet, we have our squad cars, we have our public works vehicles. We're keeping them to our best of our ability up and running. We've been subbing out work on the Fords, a lot of stuff that goes back to the dealership, whether it's warranty or otherwise. If it's otherwise, it's because the efficiency factor. There's just some things that they can do faster and more complete than we can in our shop. If we have a dozen things to do, there's always a handful that we take over there. So in the past, the budget was split up between regular vehicle maintenance and professional services vehicle maintenance. Now it's in one account, so it all comes out of the same place. So we're doing that. We talked about the fuel pump. That's the improvements in the public works side there, $20,000. We'll move on, stone and concrete. We have an infrastructure of pipes underground for stormwater drainage. As we've all seen, there's potholes, there's sinkholes. We get calls for them quite a bit. We act responsibly and as quick as we can to safely secure this location, and then we get back out there and we fix it. There are a lot of things that haven't been touched in years. There's sections that we found that have had sinkholes. Talked to residents that they've been there for years and years. We're going to start improving our infrastructure and our piping. So it's just, it hasn't had a line item. I don't know where the funds were coming from in the past, but it wasn't a defined source. It may have come out of building maintenance or MFT, but we're trying to make things a lot clearer and understandable where we're taking our funds from. So you can see in here, the bottom right-hand corner is what it looked like before, and then when everything was excavated, that's what it looks like up on top. And
What was that?
this was off of Quaker. Quaker and Cole, this was up in the corner there by Bree. We get into the public works expenditures, building services. This account covers all regular maintenance, the police department, public works, and City Hall here. One of the projects we want to do this year is a police department exterior project. The picture on the top right just shows kind of how sad parts of the police department look. I had another picture of the front facade. The stonework is stained, there's mortar that's missing, there's pieces of stone that have disappeared, come off due to freezing and thawing. So this year, we'd like to clean up our department and make it, be the stand-up building it is and a good asset to the community in looks, not just in its actions. We did put on heated gutter cables on the police department just a few months ago, and Al could probably talk to it, is we had a significant improvement in the lack of ice dams in the back of the building where the squads park and on the front steps. So things like that are going to help the longevity of our buildings too, because we're not having the freeze and the thaw up in the rafters. Bottom corner here shows the salt dome at the Public Works yard. That whole asphalt patch in front of where we drive in to get salt is deteriorated. When the dome was built, this part of the project was omitted for clarity or for expense, but the front in front of the dome should be a concrete pad. So as you're driving in there with the big loader scooping up salt, you're not picking up chunks of asphalt. That stuff gets put into the salt, gets into the machine, clogs up the auger, doesn't come out, and you have downtime. So you have a guy that's working on things. And it's a permanent solution. We put a concrete pad down there and it'll be good for 20 years. So
This is in your budget, or this is?
this is in the budget for this. This is what I'm
The
forecasting
concrete
for
pad?
this year. Yep. And that is the highlights of Public Works. Questions?
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to the very beginning. We were talking about that software tracking system, time and expense. I know when we built the website, we put in things for people to do ordering online
Yes.
through that. Is that gonna interface with this thing, or?
No, it won't. The Civic Plus system that's in there, a resident, you can call in
Right,
and
right.
put something in. That flows through an email system and gets right to the department that needs to go to. This software system is basically for tracking of the employee and what gets done.
Oh, it's a time.
It's a time reporting tool. So we'll know who did what on what day, and then we'll be able to tally everything up and basically aggregate the numbers to what we want to see.
So based upon what comes in from my website, you guys job it out, or do what you have to do?
Correct.
Okay.
If Mark tracks all those, the areas where his employees are working,
No, I
we'll be able
understand
to match that up to the salaries and wages that we're allocating to
Right,
those various
right,
departments to see if we need to adjust it from year
And
to
then
year.
the forecasted budget, so let's say next year at this time, will be much more accurate.
You
We
have
won't
the
have the
data.
highs and the lows.
Yeah, you have the data.
We have good data.
Yeah.
So rather than a paper system, you can.
Correct.
much easier.
The paper system is not that accurate.
Does this carry like a GIS component to it?
It
where
does,
You can track it by address as well?
yes. And there's a lot of different versions of software out there, designed directly for Public Works. Cartograph, PubWorks, DP Pub, there's a lot of different activities, and I'm looking into finding the best one that's gonna suit everything we have, and that will also work with our DeWalt GIS. So this is kind of the, making sure that everyone's on board with us going through to a system like this. Then I'll start investigating and figure out where we're gonna be at.
Does your budget include the cost of the software?
Yes,
Okay.
as long as it falls within the parameters I'm expecting. If not, then we'll have to have another conversation, but
Alderman Rosenthal.
Yeah, Michael, I just want to make sure that once it gets into you and you're doing that time reporting, you guys are talking about interfacing there with the financial system in some way, or is that going to have to be entered?
Well, I think that's another conversation for another day, because in many ways, we're not even utilizing the software capability we have today with our present system. So for an outside system like this, I doubt initially that it will interface directly. We'll use the information he provides us to adjust our numbers.
Is that because of the financial side of the thing?
I believe so.
That it is, there's a non-compatibility issue between the two applications then? Is that-
I can't say in all cases, but very few of those time tracking programs interface with the software that finance departments are using.
But that to me seems, well, maybe it's, let me ask the question. Is it because of the finance system we're using?
Well, many times there is a employee tracking module within the software that you purchase, but for whatever reason, many of the public works departments don't feel it goes far enough. So then they looked for private or smaller CAN systems, much less expense, provides them with greater options to track it, and they prefer that to paying the additional maintenance expense to continue to carry this module in public works that really doesn't.
At the end of 2 weeks of time, depending on the system, I'll either be able to print out or just email right over to payroll, this is where we're at for this time period.
And then payroll's got to enter that again.
But
My
right now-
point is,
Well, in many cases, though, we're not even entering to the detail he may be tracking.
Right.
He wants to know in the course of a day where every employee spent every hour worked. We really don't care in the finance department.
I
But the rest
understand
of us
that,
do.
but the
Right.
data is,
I mean no
the
offense.
data is there, and within those little creases is more work gets jumbled up. I know that from my own basic experience with systems development. I think what we maybe need to talk about, and I don't, it's not the subject of this thing, is somewhere, what of a bridge program that feeds from the more detailed software, what you guys need, without having to have somebody re-enter it again.
Well,
Because every time you do that re-entry, there's a chance for error.
And I think you're right on. I think as we progress through and find our different alternative, our different choices for this program,
Right.
I'll have a direct conversation with Mike and with payroll to make sure that if we do this, what kind of interface do we have? And if we do this one, is there something that's more compatible? There might be.
Can I expand on what you're
No,
saying?
let me finish. And have a discussion then with the vendor as to what they will supply to get our business, to get the bridge that he may need.
Yes.
If I could expand on what Larry's saying, this is the second time we're hearing this now, because this was also true of the bill payment system. So is there a disconnect in, correct me if I'm wrong, because you're giving me a funny face there, Peter.
Well, no, well, I mean, we never dealt with the time hours of that. The issue with our current issue with Cassell is that we don't use it the way we should be using it. That was the issue we had with the vehicle stickers. But that is something we are correcting, and that's actually budgeted for. We're gonna start billing out of Cassell the way Cassell was meant to be, so that vehicle stickers, business licenses, liquor licenses, all that stuff is now billed through Cassell like we do with our utility billing. And our utility billing is fantastic. That's what we want to get to eventually with our vehicle licenses, our business licenses, our liquor licenses. Anything we bill for is going to go through Cassell now and be billed through Cassell. So there may be a module that Alderman Rosenthal is talking about. It's just something that never popped up in my radar to look at. So that's something we have to look at to see what the compatibility
So
is.
you're saying it would be something like what we were talking about with Express Pay, where there should be an add-on that just wasn't available yet?
Yeah.
That would be a plug-in to
Well,
work with.
and we should be doing that with everything, I feel, as my experience tells me, we should be doing that with everything that feeds into finance, whether one way or another. If you need more detail, fine. He may not need it. A program or some kind of, we used to call them bridge programs, I don't know what they call them now.
Makes sense.
Where you basically feed that information. Whatever he need, whatever Mike needs for finance, same thing with your thing, whatever they need. So there always is that interface, because every time you re-enter something, even though it's less, your chances for error expand geometrically.
Right, and that's what I find right now, trying to figure out where we've been in the past.
Right, right.
You're right on, that bridge is my pen and a calculator.
Right.
So I think as we get through this, basically this is what I'd like to do going forward, and as we're talking about tonight, it sounds like everyone's on board with it. It's just we need to get the right product in front of us. So we don't have anything earmarked as this is the exact program we're gonna use right now.
Right, the right
So we're
product,
in the
or the vendor
investigation.
willing to create what's necessary from their code.
So based on what Mike needs for finance, what we need to go directly to payroll, and then the data that we're looking for in Public Works to support our budget and to support understanding what we're doing. And if we can't find that magic mix, we'll be doing pavement for another year. And if
The
that's what it
object is
takes,
to eliminate it.
yes. And not just eliminate, but have the understanding of what we're doing and why.
Exactly.
If you don't know why you're doing it, or how much you're doing it.
If I could make one more comment, please.
Please.
I want to commend Mark and all else that were involved in this part of the budget, because this is by far the most complete and comprehensive presentation that we've been given on a public works budget in all my time here. I think that, I mean, you really
I whipped it up last night.
did the most with the least. Well, I mean, you did the most with the least, and I mean, really, you should be commended for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and like I said, everybody else that was involved, because That was a great presentation.
Thank you. And it was nice to try to figure everything out as the way it was done in the past. And like I said, next year at this time, I feel we're gonna have much more tighter.
I'll tell you, I am incredibly impressed with how much you've done in the amount of time that you've been doing this job.
And if I can add something to your comments, Scott, especially the boiler room.
All right, can we move on?
I have a couple of questions.
Oh, you got them. Go.
Mark?
Yes, sir.
I do emphasize what Scott was saying also, you really do a great job, and you're really on top of everything that I've ever asked you to do, so it's really amazing to me, and I thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
But I do have a couple questions about the software. Is it specific to Public Works, or would it be adaptable to other parts of the city? The tracking program I'm talking about.
Into other parts of the city, as in engineering?
For example, frontline administration, you know, the people that work upstairs. Would it be possible to track them as an addition to your Public Works employees for you know, just exactly what they're doing from month to month?
I'd have to give you, and I'd imagine so, because I have never looked into that part of it. But the software that's out there, a couple of the top names, I know cities that use that as their base, so it must do it all.
I have a reason for asking that, and that's because of vehicle sticker sales. I mean, we kind of like to know how much effort is really put into that, as far as, you know, time and effort, time and...
Except we'll find out that Joe spends like 6 hours out of his day fielding questions from us.
Yeah, sometimes you don't want the data.
Second question is, I noticed you have the water operator listed as a full-time,
Yes.
Does he do anything other than water?
Yes.
So-
All the Public Works employees do more than just a job title.
Yeah.
But we try to figure out how much time they spend, and you try to figure out with the software to be a little easier. The best example is our half of a pay for the parking guy.
Mhm.
He doesn't spend half of his life at Metro. He might spend 6 hours a week.
Right.
And then other weeks, we have 4 guys there for 40 hours, you know, because there's different things going on. Snow plowing is a good example. You plow the place 6 times in a week and you get 40 hours of time or 50 hours.
Right. No, I thought that was the case. I just
So,
wanted to
yep.
make sure that
And the
we all-
same thing happens with the water operator. We have 1 guy towards it right now, full-time. But when we have a water main break, as you know, we have 3, 4 guys out there, and we're out there for whatever length of time it takes. So that's kind of the way that math works out. And if we get into the software program, we'll have an even better understanding that maybe we should be at 1.5 guys out of the water fund and less out of Metro and more, different things like that.
Also, I was just thinking, do we have another second person trained as a water operator now?
We have a second person lined up to be
Jim
trained.
O'Neill was the second.
Correct.
Okay.
So I have another guy who's in the wings,
Okay.
and we're gonna be doing more training this year on that.
All right, anyone else?
Oh.
Yeah, none from Mark. Thank you, Mark. Very good presentation. One for Joe. The GIS now, is that, whose domain is that within? Is that Mark's now? Is that yours? Is it?
With the proposed changes of taking a lot of the GIS out of the building and development, that got moved into the administration fund for oversight.
Okay. Because I think that we see tonight that there's a lot of overlap where GIS could be from just administration to public works to a bunch of different people. And it's just, as long as everybody's working together and when we go out for bids on things that Mark knows, you know, what he would want to see in that, and we constantly help that thing evolve into something bigger. The other question is for Mike. Now it's for you, Mike. You took the NRC out of Public Works and moved it into boards and councils. I get that, it makes sense. But does it, if there are a lot of things that Public Works does with them that kind of bleed into both?
Well, Mark and I had that conversation, and I think it took Mark, you had a few questions of what was being charged in there to begin with.
The splitting up the account, we had some issues with the way the budget came through last year, and it wasn't clear at all times as to the NRC budget and the Public Works budget on different things. So splitting it off that way makes it a cleaner divide with a commission or council versus Public Works. The labor, what we do in Public Works, helping with the NRC, isn't a massive amount of time. If they need assistance on something, and we can work together to help things get through, we're all here for the same purpose, for beautifying the city and taking care of our environment. Again, if we had the data, we could actually show that we've only spent 4% of our time in the last year working with the NRC, because they're really substantial and they're a locked-in group that get things done on their own without a lot of interaction. So I think that's why it makes the accounting part of it really the only issue.
So you're creating like a firewall so things don't bleed.
No, I
So,
think it just,
otherwise
it puts
your
them where
supplies, equipment and
Right.
whatnot might.
yeah, but it puts them into into the range of they're a board or commission.
Right, that's true. I
So-
agree. The other question is on, you have some of we talked about having a fund inside of Public Works that would be used to make improvements, but not quite meet a capital improvement threshold. So there's a couple things in here. I was wondering if you have like the radio equipment, just general equipment, what else was there? There was something else I saw. Does it make sense to have those? Are those going to be reoccurring costs? Like radio costs might happen and not happen. Software is going to happen and not happen. So we're going to see these things coming on the radar for our 3-year look forward or look back on our past budgets as we look at the new budget. Does it make sense to have those all separate, or should they be just more grouped together where you have Public Works, office equipment, which would be radio, software, in that account we then know that we spend about 30 a year in it, and it might be a mix of 3 or 4 different things.
I think sometimes, and it's kind of a new process for me here. Once we have the threshold set, whether it's 20, 25,000, that's easy enough to distinguish. It's hard for me to tell which items are going to be reoccurring and which ones aren't. If we saw they were reoccurring, maybe we'll find it worthwhile to group 2 or 3 of those items together to make it a category in the capital program so we can consistently fund for it.
Okay.
The last thing that I want to do is distort the operating budgets just by these one-time capital items, $10,000, $15,000 items that are going to occur every other year. What we're attempting to do on the operating side is keep those operating expenses as stable as possible, so you can see or know why they're fluctuating from year to year. We'll deal with the big expenses in the capital projects.
A classic example of that, well, becoming classic, our personal computers.
Yeah, perfect example. I'm not sure how many you're going to buy in the course of the year, how often you replace them. The easiest way with personal computers is to set up a replacement schedule for them and replace X amount every year.
By policy, you define their shelf life. You know, what the shelf life is. We've got machines out there that I understand, we still have them out there, that the software they're running on is not even supported anymore.
Now, though, the costs sometimes for some of the computers that we're using are so much cheaper than they were before that it's hard to consider them a capital expense.
They're almost supplies.
Yep. Yep.
All right, are we done? I have one request, Mark.
Yes, sir.
Could you kindly come over to my daughter's house? She has kids there and themselves, and the adults. They don't realize when you turn the light off, you can save money. I've told them
Absolutely.
for a very long time. You mentioned it right here in a big-time meeting.
I have a program in my house, and it's usually it's just a loud voice.
Unbelievable.
But I can stand outside the house and scream through the windows, turn the lights on.
I think switches that automatically turn on
Yeah.
after a certain length of time.
Yeah.
I'm sure they can be programmed, right?
Yeah, my children aren't fond of those. I have them.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
All right, Joe, moving on.
That brings us to the areas of administration, finance, and legal highlights. I think overall, the big change this year, the funding is pretty level, but what we've tried to do is segregate the activities in accounting. What you're used to in prior years, there was that super department of administration, which also had finance and legal and we've tried to separate that. I think from year to year, it'll be easier to compare 2018, 2019, 2020 of the specific activity, whether that's legal cost, engineering costs. The other change, we have placed engineering under administration. Your point, Alderman Ludwigson, is very good. We're small enough, we pretty much are able to operate in the weekly department meetings. While we don't have a specific GIS committee or task force, there's communication there. I think there's also value for it to be under administration, because when there's competing departments, and I've seen this happen before, sometimes that, the money went to the one that was first in and most aggressive, and that maybe wasn't the best way to do that. So by having it under administration, there's a bit of authority, and we work through our department staff meetings to look at competing needs and so forth. But really, I think for this year's budget, that's the biggest change. We've tried to separate the areas that used to be under the super department into individual activities and to provide specific accounting for them. Those areas being administration, finance, engineering, and IT. This is our first year through contractual services with Lauterbach and Amon for financial management services. Personally, I think they're doing a very good job. I'd hope that we continue that this year, and I sense that there's satisfaction specifically of the budget presentations and the information that you're receiving. So it's my recommendation to continue with that. And as you can see, there's also considerable, it's an area we've been able to save considerable amount of money. Among the highlights going forward for this year, I think one of the major initiatives will be, we've started a competitive process for auditing services. Mike, if you want to talk about that, or Sherry is very much involved in that.
Sherry's the perfect one to talk about. She put it all together and set it out.
So we sent out an RFP to 5 public accounting firms. The bids were due back today, so they all did respond. We're going to go through and analyze what their capabilities are. I am confident that we'll be able to reduce the audit fee based on just the initial look over at the fees that came through. So we're happy about that for next year. So probably at the next meeting, we'll get the recommendation for the new contract for the new auditors.
Can I ask her a question?
Please, ask her all.
Sherry, are you bringing with you your other municipality processes for doing that? Because we don't really have a purchasing department, and we have some policies, but not really a very standard process for purchasing. Are you doing, when you put your RFP out, did you do it the way that you do it other places?
Yes.
And we can bring that in and make that our process, and then learn what that is eventually. And
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. We have, one of the things on the to-do list is a purchase order system or some form of procurement. So yes, we'll look at that.
But just standard things like, obviously you ask these people for their insurance, or you gave them what they have to have for their professional services, insurance or repairs or insurance.
Rule for municipalities that is basically the template that is used, and then just roll it out into wherever it is.
Thank you.
Alderman Rosenthal.
Yeah, Chair, what policy or what's the prevailing opinion among your professionals in terms of the term an entity should have an audit firm before they rotated? Is it 5 years? I remember hearing 5 years. I don't know if that's...
It's typically 3 to 5.
Okay.
We were 6 years with Baker Tilly because the audit firms now are pushing for extensions and automatic renewals options to renew. One of them that came in today, we asked for a 3-year proposal, and they gave us 3 plus 5 years out. So they're trying to expand their services and their commitment, of course, but typically it's 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, I used to use 5 years.
Just like you asked the questions now, generally both of them are in the office far more than I am, so feel free to pick up the phone.
I think if I had them, I could be a finance director.
Well, Mike's just another pretty face.
Do you wanna work
just a
in-
face.
I'm
You
just
can get your
kidding.
maintenance work.
Yeah, do you wanna work in public works? Yeah. Your hands will get a little more callous though.
Everybody should be
He
cross-trained.
grips that pen
That's
pretty
it.
tight.
Yeah.
I like that. All right,
Pinching
what's
pennies, he's got
next?
strong fingers.
Well, that's the presentation we have. There's, really, the proposed expenditures in these areas are pretty flat.
Joe, can you tell us what I see with the city engineer under professional services, I'm guessing that's what it is. It's got the abbreviation ENGR, and then there's one that says GOV Infor Systems, and then reimbursable, what are those?
How that's coded,
So it says 16 hours a week, or
Oh.
6 hours a week for office hours, and then
GIS.
information system is 21 hours, or 21,000.
We just tried to split up a separate account so
Yeah.
that when you were asking about GIS-related expenses, that we'd have him break out his billing related to GIS and we'd code them to the
Oh,
individual
okay.
accounts.
So that's all,
For engineering
Engineering.
charges that come through that we can bill somebody else, we'll code them to reimbursable.
got it, okay.
there's basically, I think, 4 areas of engineering costs. The one is capital projects related to that, and we place those actually within the projects, whether it's resurfacing, drainage, or whatever. There's what's reimbursable that might come from plant engineering reviews, grading reviews, things like that. And then there's GIS, and then finally is the services that we have for, the Walt Hamilton engineers are here 2 days a week, Tuesday and Thursday morning.
Joe, just a comment, I like the idea of splitting the way you've done it. It makes it more readable and understandable as to what's going on, and it's consistent with the functionality and program approach to the rest of the budget. My question to you with that, and going to the GIS, I agree it should be part of administration, but who is the head poobah within administration for the GIS?
That's me,
Huh?
that's me.
You?
It's
Okay.
under that, right.
Okay, all right.
We
So you
would,
become the expert, right?
well, I don't know if I'm an expert, maybe I'd say more gatekeeper.
Okay.
Because I suspect there's gonna be competing interests. Mark will be interested in mapping infrastructure. Dan will have interest in his area, Al will have interest in their area. Generally, we'll try to do this as a committee, but ultimately, there's resources that have to be allocated, and it's,
The placement is right, I have no
Yeah.
question, I just wanted to know.
Yeah.
At the last budget meeting, we'll cover all the remaining funds, cover the capital project fund, and then any other questions you might have.
All right.
well, thank you. That's the extent of our presentation tonight. Is there any questions? We would need a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Public comments.
Oh, public comment.
Have we had, has anyone turned in a request for public comment?
Nobody has turned in a request.
All right, proceed with your motion. Motion adjourned.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Say goodbye.